So imagine you're an honor student studying French at this really quiet liberal arts college.
Right. Very structured, very academic.
Exactly. And your background is like managing an equestrian center in a tiny Pennsylvania town. You are deeply embedded in this predictable environment.
Okay, setting the scene.
Yeah. And then abruptly, you just drop it all. You pack up, move to Los Angeles, and become this award-winning star in the adult entertainment industry, basically leading a total double life.
I mean, it immediately challenges every preconceived notion you might have about, how a career is supposed to unfold.
Oh, completely.
People usually expect this very linear trajectory, like you study a subject, you get an entry-level job in that field, and you slowly climb the ladder. This just completely shatters that model.
It really does. So welcome to today's deep dive. We are exploring the lightning fast, like highly impactful career trajectory of Alicia Alighatti, a figure who made massive waves in mature media between 2004 and 2007.
And we should probably set our mission right at the top here.
Yeah, absolutely. We are not here to lean into sensationalism. What we're really unpacking today is a profound case study in extreme work ethics, pragmatic business pivots, and the psychological mechanics of compartmentalizing your identity.
Especially in such a highly controversial field.
Yeah.
We have this great stack of sources for you today. Biographical profiles, career retrospectives, and an incredibly candid, extensive interview she did back in 2006.
It's a really fascinating read.
It is, because when you look at her timeline through a strictly analytical lens, you don't see someone just, swept up in Hollywood glamour. You see someone operating with the ruthless efficiency of a startup founder.
Yeah, managing their own brand IP. So let's start with that unlikely origin story in Wind Gap, Pennsylvania, because the contrast is just staggering.
Wind Gap is tiny, right?
Super tiny. And she grew up working with horses from the time she was 4 years old. By 13, she's working at the Bit by Bit Equestrian Center, eventually rising to assistant manager.
At 13, that's intense responsibility.
Right. And she later described herself during those years not as a typical girly girl, but as this highly assertive tomboy who was entirely used to bossing around 1,200 pounds of horse flesh.
I love that quote. That phrase, 1,200 pounds of horse flesh, it kind of tells you everything you need to know about her baseline psychology.
I know.
Well, managing massive, powerful animals requires a very specific type of nonverbal authority. You learn early on how to establish absolute boundaries, and maintain control in unpredictable physical situations.
That makes total sense.
Because she developed that skill set so young, the idea of being intimidated by a person, regardless of their size or perceived power in a room, it simply didn't compute for her.
She basically forged an ironclad sense of physical agency before she ever set foot in a boardroom or on a film set. But she's pairing that physical toughness with serious academic rigor, too.
Right, the French studies.
Yeah, after high school, she heads to Lynchburg College in Virginia. She enters the Westover Honors Program and studies French and international relations under a Dr. Edward de Clare. She is, entirely immersed in the academic track.
Which makes her pivot in 2004 so fascinating.
Uh-huh.
I mean, 2 years into her honors degree, she makes the abrupt decision to leave college and relocate to Los Angeles to pursue mature media full-time.
It's quite the leap.
On the surface, yeah, it looks like a chaotic, impulsive move.
I actually want to push back on the framing of that move a bit. It's really easy to look at a 2004 relocation to LA and assume she was chasing fame or maybe running away from a restrictive small-town life.
Sure, that's the cliche.
Right.
Yeah.
But the underlying mechanics seem much more calculated. She was already dabbling in online modeling while she was still in college, right?
She was, and this is where we have to look at the economics of independent online modeling in the early 2000s. She was flying back and forth to Los Angeles to do shoots.
Okay.
And every time she flew out, she was spending $500 just on a plane ticket.
Oh, wow. That's a massive hit to her margins.
Precisely. She wasn't moving to Los Angeles to chase some romanticized Hollywood dream. She recognized that she was essentially running a solo business, and her supply chain was totally inefficient.
So it's a business move.
Entirely. Moving to LA was a purely pragmatic maneuver to eliminate overhead and consolidate her operations. She looked at the spreadsheets, realized the travel was eating into her profits, and optimized her geographical location to maximize output.
She's literally treating herself as a B2B enterprise. But even with that optimization, her actual workflow once she gets to California is just staggering.
The volume of output is immense.
We are looking at a schedule where she was shooting around 5 days a week in a highly compressed 3-year window, she built a filmography of anywhere from 60 to over 130 films.
And 17 major magazine covers on top of that.
It's wild, especially when you consider the physical reality of what those shoots actually required. That's something I think gets completely misunderstood by the general public.
Absolutely.
There is this lingering assumption that working in films for mature audiences is mostly about showing up, turning on some charm, and looking good for a camera.
Just kind of hanging out on set.
Right. But looking at the sources, this resembles an endurance sport or like a logistical marathon far more than a standard acting gig.
The physical toll is severe. I mean, the choreography involved in these productions, particularly the complex group scenes she was known for, it requires an extraordinary level of stamina.
And flexibility, right.
Flexibility, physical coordination, all of it. Performers are essentially holding physically demanding, unnatural positions for extended periods. And they're doing this while managing lighting cues, camera angles, and the movements of multiple co-stars.
She explicitly mentions doing very specific, highly demanding acts that a lot of top performers actively avoid just because of the sheer physical strain.
Yeah, she operated at the absolute edge of her physical capacity, and she was incredibly candid about the consequences. In that 2006 interview, she discusses sustaining real, tangible injuries on set.
Really? Like serious injuries.
Yeah, during a highly demanding sequence. And it wasn't just a minor inconvenience. She had to make the professional call to completely stop, take time off from doing that specific type of scene, and wait for her body to heal before attempting it again.
Wow. It's a sobering reminder that underneath the polished final product, she was managing herself as a finite physical resource.
Definitely.
She had to navigate complex on-set chemistry, communicate hard boundaries in real time while the cameras are rolling, and then manage her own athletic recovery on the weekends.
It completely strips away the illusion of glamour, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It reveals this grueling, highly specialized form of physical labor. You have to be hyper-aware of your own physical limits and absolutely ruthless about enforcing them.
Because if you aren't, the environment will simply break you down.
Exactly.
Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying the vibe, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with your friends. It really helps us out.
So managing that kind of physical exhaustion on set makes her off-set life even more baffling to me. Well, you would think she would spend every ounce of her downtime just recovering, sleeping, resting.
Instead, she pivots that intense drive into a completely separate, heavily guarded private identity. The way she branded herself and partitioned her life is a fascinating psychological study.
Let's talk about that stage name, Alicia Alighatti.
I found it hilarious that she essentially trolled the industry with her branding. She was reading the 14th century Italian poet Dante Alighieri, the author of the Divine Comedy, and decided to tweak his last name for her mature media persona.
It's a brilliant intellectual inside joke. She is planting a flag that signals her academic background, even though almost no one in her immediate professional orbit caught the reference.
In fact, it backfired in the funniest way possible. The altered spelling constantly confused marketers and fans. She later joked that she had to use 8 different spellings when searching for her own work online.
Because the industry couldn't figure out how to spell Alighatti.
Exactly. But despite the spelling confusion, the brand was undeniably successful. By 2006, she reaches the absolute peak of that specific mountain.
She wins 2 major industry awards that year, right?
Yep, for her performance in a film called Dark Side, specifically for a highly complex, critically praised group scene. She is recognized globally, working with elite talent agencies and pulling in significant revenue.
And here is where the story completely defies logic for me.
Okay, lay it out.
While she is standing on stage, accepting industry awards, and operating as a highly visible public figure in a highly controversial field, she is simultaneously re-enrolled in a junior college in California.
It's so wild. Her ultimate goal was to knock out her general education requirements so she could transfer to UCLA.
The cognitive dissonance required to maintain those 2 realities is immense. I mean, you have this aggressive, highly stylized, award-winning persona on one side.
And an anonymous college student stressing over syllabi and complaining about LA traffic on the other.
Yes. The disguise she utilized to keep those worlds entirely separate is fascinating, too. When asked if anyone in her political science or history classes ever recognized her, she said no.
Because she employed a very specific physical transformation.
0 makeup, hair pulled severely back, a hat, and the crowning touch glasses and braces.
She actually referred to it as her 14-year-old look.
Which acts as a psychological firewall. I don't think those braces and glasses were just about fooling the people sitting next to her in class.
What do you mean?
I think they function as a somatic trigger, like a physical cue for her own brain. By changing her physical state so drastically, she was utilizing context-dependent memory.
Oh, I see.
She boots down the intense, hyper-aware performer persona and boots up the quiet, analytical, academic persona.
That is a crucial survival mechanism. In the interview, she explicitly calls herself a closet freak, noting that she appears nice and innocent in daily life, but becomes a completely different entity on set.
That kind of strict identity compartmentalization prevents the industry from consuming her core self.
Right. In a field that demands so much of your physical and emotional capital, keeping your private intellectual life entirely walled off is probably the only way to avoid burnout.
Think about how difficult it is for the average person to just, turn off their email notifications after 5 p.m.
Oh, guilty.
Yeah,
We constantly let our work mode bleed into our home mode, and we aren't even working in controversial or physically invasive fields.
exactly. And she managed to build an absolute concrete wall between a globally recognized mature media persona and her private reality.
And that wall allowed her to maintain her intellectual sharpness, which occasionally bled back onto the set in the most surreal ways.
Yes, that brings us to one of the most incredible anecdotes in this entire stack of sources.
We discussed her honors background in French at Lynchburg College earlier. Cut to a few years later, she is on set shooting one of her most highly praised, physically demanding scenes.
With a top-tier co-star, Manuel Ferrara.
Right. And in the middle of this incredibly intense, highly specialized physical choreography, they are conversing entirely in French.
It is the ultimate collision of her two worlds. They are navigating extreme physical logistics while simultaneously engaging in elite linguistic practice.
It just completely shatters the stereotype of the passive, disengaged performer. Her brain was fully online, she was highly present.
Which ties directly into how fiercely she protected her own agency. She wasn't just following directions, she was actively managing the environment.
The sources emphasize how vocal she was about the mechanics of on-set chemistry, too. She openly discussed instances where co-stars were physically incompatible with her.
Yeah, if the logistics of a scene were causing pain or simply weren't working on a mechanical level, she halted the production. She did not defer to the director or the studio when it came to her own physical limits.
She treated her body as her primary business asset. If the asset was at risk, she shut down the operation.
And that supreme level of boundary setting ultimately leads us to the final, most defining boundary of her career, her exit strategy.
The timeline of her involvement in the industry is remarkably brief. It spans entirely from 2004 to her official retirement in 2007. Just a 3-year arc.
3 years, that's it.
She enters the industry, rapidly scales to the top, wins the awards, shoots over 100 films, and then completely vanishes from the space.
It really makes you wonder if this was a meticulously planned smash-and-grab operation, or if she simply hit a wall and burned out from the sheer intensity of the work.
I lean toward the former. The evidence strongly points to a calculated operation. Consider the data points we've discussed: moving to LA to cut flight costs, guarding her identity with braces and glasses, and immediately re-enrolling in junior college while at the peak of her earning potential.
She never treated the adult entertainment industry as her final destination.
It was a venture capital sprint.
Exactly. She used the industry as a highly lucrative temporary vehicle to fund her actual life goals.
Because many people in high-paying, high-intensity fields fall victim to the sunk cost fallacy. They start making significant money, they gain status, and they become trapped by the lifestyle.
Even if the work is destroying them physically or mentally.
But she completely bypassed that trap. Once the vehicle had served its purpose, once she had secured the resources she needed for UCLA and proved whatever she needed to prove to herself, she killed the engine and walked away.
She authored her own exit on her exact own terms. She didn't wait for the industry to discard her. She discarded the industry.
Which brings us to the core takeaways of this entire deep dive. When you look past the sensationalized surface of controversial fields, you find real people making highly complex, pragmatic choices.
Alicia Alighatti optimized her supply chain, managed grueling physical logistics, and constructed a psychological fortress to protect her core identity.
Her story challenges us to reconsider the monolithic, often dismissive view society holds regarding performers in mature media. It really highlights the profound individual agency required to navigate that space successfully.
And then the agency to leave it behind.
True power in a career isn't just about scaling the ladder. It's about having the clarity to know when to step off entirely. She walked into a chaotic, intensely demanding field, bent it to her will for 3 years, and then quietly returned to her textbooks.
Completely unbothered by the noise she left behind, is a masterclass in treating a job as a tool, rather than letting the job treat you as a tool.
And that leaves us with a final thought for you to mull over today. Think about your own professional life and the boundaries you maintain. How much of your work self is a carefully constructed persona?
Your own psychological version of glasses and braces.
Exactly. And if you woke up tomorrow and realized that persona was no longer serving your ultimate life goals, would you have the sheer willpower to drop it, completely reinvent yourself, and just walk away?
Are you driving your career, or is the career driving you?
Something to seriously chew on. Until next time, keep diving deep.